You're walking down a busy street. Someone collapses 10 feet away. You freeze. You look around. Everyone else is frozen too. Nobody moves. And here's the strange part. The more people who witness it, the less likely any single person is to help. That sounds backwards. It isn't. In March of 1964, a young woman named Kitty Genovese was murdered outside her apartment building in Queens, New York. Newspapers reported that dozens of neighbors heard her cries and did nothing. The exact number was later disputed, and the full story was more complicated than the headlines suggested. But the case did something unexpected. It made two psychologists ask a question nobody had asked before. Why does a crowd make people less safe, not more? Their names were John Darley and Bib Latani. In 1968, they ran an experiment that changed how scientists understood human behavior forever. They put people in separate rooms, told them they were having a group discussion over an intercom, and then staged one participant appearing to have a medical emergency. Some people believed they were the only listener. Others believed there were 4 or 5 listeners. The results were stark. When people believed they were the only witness, 85% intervened. When they believed 4 other people were also listening, that number dropped to 31%. Same emergency, same sounds of distress, wildly different response. Darley and Latani called this the Bystander Effect, and the mechanism behind it has a name too: diffusion of responsibility. Here's how it works inside your brain. When you're alone and something goes wrong, the responsibility to act sits entirely on you. There's no one else to defer to. But the moment another person enters the scene, your mind quietly does the math. Someone else could help. Maybe they're better equipped. Maybe they already called for help. The weight of responsibility splits and splits and splits again until it feels light enough to ignore. You're not calculating this consciously. You're not choosing to be callous. Your brain is running an ancient piece of software, and it's running it faster than you can think. Think about your ancestors for a moment. 200,000 years ago, you didn't live alone. You lived in a small group, maybe 20 to 50 people, and that group was everything: food, safety, mating, survival. All of it depended on the group functioning as a unit. In a group that small, responsibility was never ambiguous. If danger appeared, everyone knew who was closest, who was strongest, who was already reacting. Roles were visible, faces were familiar. There was no anonymity to hide behind. Now stretch that same brain across a modern crowd of strangers. 50 people on a train platform. None of them know each other. None of them have defined roles. The ancient wiring that once assigned responsibility clearly now finds itself confused by scale. Too many unfamiliar faces. Too much ambiguity about who should act. Your brain, still running Pleistocene software, does what it has always done. It looks for social cues. And in a crowd of strangers, the most common cue is inaction. If nobody else looks alarmed, some part of you concludes the situation must not be alarming. This is called pluralistic ignorance, and it's the second piece of the puzzle. You look at the calm face of the stranger next to you. They look at yours. Neither of you realizes the other is also confused, also scared, also waiting for someone else to move first. A room full of people can be privately panicking while publicly performing calm, and that performance becomes the very thing that stops anyone from acting. There's a chilling twist to all of this. Bib Latani and Judith Roden ran a follow-up study in 1969. They staged a woman falling and crying out in pain from behind a partition. When a participant was alone, 70% went to help. When there were 2 strangers present, that number dropped to 40%. When the second person was a passive actor instructed to show no reaction at all, only 7% of participants helped. 7%. One person doing nothing was enough to convince almost everyone else that nothing needed to be done. This is why fire safety training tells you to point at a specific person and say, "You call 911," instead of shouting, "Someone call 911," into a crowd. Naming a single, specific individual short-circuits diffusion of responsibility. It restores what your ancestors always had: clarity about who is responsible. Here's the part that should unsettle you a little. This isn't just about emergencies on the street. It shows up everywhere responsibility can be shared. A group project where everyone assumes someone else will finish the report. A group chat where a friend mentions they're struggling and 30 people see the message and nobody replies because surely someone else already has. An online comment section where cruelty goes unchallenged because correcting it feels like someone else's job. The internet didn't create this pattern. It just scaled it to a size your ancestors never had to survive. Your brain evolved in groups of dozens. It never evolved for crowds of millions. So when you scroll past a stranger's cry for help buried in thousands of comments, you're not failing morally. You're running an ancient survival mechanism in an environment it was never built for. Does that mean the bystander effect is inescapable? Not quite. Researchers have found something almost as powerful as the effect itself: awareness of it. Studies following the original Darley and Latané research found that people who had simply learned about the bystander effect were significantly more likely to intervene later, even in unrelated situations. Understanding the mechanism appears to interrupt it. Once you know your brain is quietly diffusing responsibility across a crowd, you can consciously override it. You can decide deliberately that the responsibility is yours. That's a strange kind of power. Most instincts can't be switched off just by knowing about them. Fear doesn't disappear because you understand the amygdala. Hunger doesn't vanish because you understand ghrelin. But the bystander effect seems to weaken the moment it's named. So think back to that street again. Someone collapses. A crowd gathers. Every face is scanning every other face, each one quietly waiting for permission to act. Now imagine you're the one who knows what's happening inside all of those heads at once. You know the size of the crowd is the very thing paralyzing it. You know that somewhere in the past 200,000 years, a brain built for a campfire of 30 people got dropped into a city of millions, and it never got the update. You step forward anyway. Not because the instinct disappeared, because you chose to override it. And that choice, small as it looks from the outside, is the same one your ancestors never had to make. They lived in groups small enough that stepping forward was automatic. You live in a world so large that stepping forward has become an act of will. You're walking down a busy street. Someone collapses 10 feet away. You freeze for half a second. Then you remember. And this time, you're the one who moves first.